Good morning, students. We have concluded the mechanical properties of solids. Now we are going to discuss the mechanical properties of fluids. First of all, we should understand what is the meaning of fluid. Fluid is the one which is capable of flowing under a small shearing stress, under a small application of external force. The fluid is capable of flowing. So, liquids and gases are the one which are capable of flowing. So, liquids and gases together we call them as fluids. Fluids are the one which can flow. Which can flow under a small external force or under a small shearing stress. Shear stress. Whereas solids can change their shape under a shearing stress to a very little extent, keeping its volume fixed. If we apply an external force tangentially, the solid can change its shape very little under the external force. Whereas for fluids like liquids and gases, a small external force, a small shear stress is enough to keep them to flow. So they offer very little resistance. They offer very little resistance to external force. Therefore, they are capable of flowing. So the matter which is capable of flowing are called as fluids. So liquids and gases together are termed as fluids. Now, what is the marking difference between the solids and fluids? We must understand. Solids have a definite shape and definite size, and solids have a definite volume also. Whereas the liquids have definite volume. The liquids have definite volume, but the liquids do not have their shape, their own shape. Liquids do not have their shape of their own. They will take the shape of any container. In whatever container we pour a liquid, it will take the shape of that container. So that is the difference between liquids and solids. Whereas gases do not have shape, do not have size. Even the gases also do not have fixed volumes. The volume of gas varies under external pressure. As you go on increasing the external pressure, the volume of gases goes on decreasing. So the volume of gases is not fixed until and unless you take it in a fixed container having a particular walls. So when the gas is taken under a certain pressure in a particular container, then only it will have a fixed volume. Otherwise, the gases will not have volumes, fixed volumes. So solids have definite shape and fixed volume. Liquids do not have shape. Liquids have fixed volume, but do not have shape. They take the shape of the container in which we take the liquids. Gases, neither they have fixed shape nor they have fixed volume. So gases have no fixed shape or volume. Volume of gases vary under external pressure. And in the previous topic we have concluded about the compressibility. The solids have least compressibility. So also the liquids have compressibility to very little extent. So we can conclude the compressibility of solids and liquids is very less. So in general we can write solids are incompressible. Even liquids also incompressible. Under normal circumstances, under ordinary pressures, liquids are incompressible compared to gases, whereas gases are highly compressible. Therefore, we now study only about the liquids and gases. Liquids and gases together we call them as fluids. So, under a small external shear stress, they can change their shape and they will be able to flow. So, although the liquids have definite volume, but they change their shape very easily under small external forces, whereas gases do not have fixed volumes. Gases are highly compressible under external pressures. So these are some of the properties. Before we actually go into the details of the pressure, right? Now we are going to discuss about the very important property, that is pressure. You all know that pressure is the force exerted per unit area. Force per unit area is called as pressure. So I will write here force per unit area as pressure, and actually Newton per meter square is the SI unit of pressure. Newton per meter square is also called as Pascal. So Pascal is the SI unit of pressure. So pressure is defined as the force per unit area. So pressure is inversely proportional to area. Larger the area, lesser is the pressure. For a particular force, larger the area, lesser is the pressure. Lesser the area, more is the pressure. So pressure is inversely proportional to area on which the force is exerted. So a very good example is pin. If you take a pin, it has blunt end as well as sharp end. If you just press the pin into your finger, the sharp end of the pin very readily pierces through the skin and causes injury. Whereas if you turn the pin and press it with its blunt end, the blunt end will not be able to pierce through the skin. The reason is although we are applying same amount of force, when you are taking the sharp end of the pin to the skin, then the sharp end has got a very small area. So smaller the area, larger is the pressure. So that pressure is enough to pierce through our skin. Whereas when you take the blunt end of the pin and try to pierce it through the skin, then what happens? The blunt end of the pin has larger area. As a result, it will not be able to pierce through our skin. That's how we understand the pressure. Another example is, you must have observed the demonstration in a circus. A person will lay down with the help of a wooden plank on his chest. He will lay down with a flat wooden plank on his chest, and he keeps his breath in his lungs. He keeps his breath, and even though a vehicle runs on his chest, he will not get any injury. Or sometimes he may take the elephant also. Elephant can stand on his chest with wooden plank. The wooden plank laid on the chest, you will not get injury. If he doesn't take the wooden plank on his chest, and if the elephant stands on his bare chest, then definitely his ribs will be broken into pieces. I think you got the point. Same amount of force is acting for a larger area if he uses wooden plank. When the wooden plank of larger area is used, then pressure is reduced. He will be safe, and he will hold the breath also, so that the surface area is still enlarged. So when the area is enlarged, when the area is increased, pressure decreases. On the other hand, if the area decreases, pressure increases. Therefore, pressure is inversely proportional to area. Then next, let us write the dimensions of pressure. Dimensions of pressure. You see, it is a dimension of force by area. Dimension of force, you know, it is kg meter per second square, and dimension of area is L square. So, if you take this denominator 2 to the numerator, then it becomes ml raised to minus 1 t raised to minus 2. So, this can be written as kg per meter per second square. This is also the mechanical unit, SI unit of pressure. So, the dimension of pressure is ml raised to minus 1 t raised to minus 2. So, this is equal to 1 Pascal. 1 Pascal is equal to kg per meter per second square. L raised to 1 minus 2 becomes L raised to minus 1. That's how we get the dimension of pressure. Whenever we take any object inside a fluid like water, let us suppose we take an object inside the water. Then, before we take the object inside the water, let us assume that the water is at rest. Think that we have taken a bucket full of water which is at rest, and now you are taking any object inside the water. Then the object experiences a liquid pressure. The object experiences the pressure due to the water, that is called as hydraulic pressure. The hydraulic pressure is due to the normal component of force acting on all the faces. So we write fluid pressure or liquid pressure as equal to normal component of force divided by area, or component of force which is acting perpendicular to the area. That only results into fluid pressure. Therefore, look at this definition. Although we have written pressure is equal to force by area, force is a vector quantity. But in case of fluid pressure, you see, we are considering only the normal component of force. Only normal component of force acts on the body, so that the liquid is still at rest. Horizontal component of force does not act. Therefore, the pressure is scalar quantity. Pressure is scalar quantity, whereas we know that force is a vector quantity. In that vector force, horizontal component of force does not act on the object which is immersed in the liquid. If suppose horizontal component of force would be acting on the surface of an object immersed in the liquid, then the liquid would not be at rest. Liquid would be flowing from one end of the surface to the other end of the surface. Since we have considered the liquid to be at rest and the object taken inside the liquid is also at rest, then horizontal component of force does not act. It is only the perpendicular component of force which acts on all the surfaces. That's how, if you take for example, if this is an object taken in a container filled with liquid like water, suppose the liquid is also at rest and the object is also at rest, then only the perpendicular component of force acts on this. This force acting per unit area of the object is called as fluid pressure. Okay, and it is a scalar quantity. The next important quantity that we should know is density. What is density? Density is denoted by rho. It is mass per unit volume. Density is defined as mass per unit volume. So density is also scalar quantity. This is also scalar quantity. And you see, mass is measured in kilogram. So SI unit of density is kg per meter cube, because meter cube is the SI unit of volume. So kg per meter cube is the SI unit of density. For example, whenever we speak of density, then usually we speak of that density being constant at a particular temperature. We speak of density of the objects under normal atmospheric pressure. Now, for example, density of water. Density of water at 4 degrees Celsius. At 4 degrees Celsius under normal pressure. Normal pressure means standard pressure, that is 1 atmospheric pressure. The density of water is 1000 kg per meter cube, which is the density expressed in SI unit. Same density in CGS unit, you may be knowing. Density in CGS unit is gram per centimeter cube. So same thing, if you write density of water at 4 degrees Celsius, it is 1 gram per centimeter cube. 1 gram per centimeter cube. Very easy to remember. 1 gram per centimeter cube is the density of water at 4 degrees Celsius. Please remember. Why is it so and all? We will learn it a little later. Water has a very peculiar property. It is called as anomalous behavior of water, which has got a very good significance in the nature that we will discuss later. So, just one example I have written. Density of water is 1000 kg per meter cube. Based on this, we define one more quantity. It is called as relative density. Relative density is the density of the substance divided by density of water at 4 degrees Celsius. It is denoted by RD, relative density. It is defined as density of substance, any substance whose relative density we want to find out. Density of substance divided by density of water at 4 degrees Celsius. because we know density of water at 4 degrees Celsius is 1000 kg per meter cube. For example, relative density of a substance is 2.7. 2.7. It means the density of that substance divided by density of water at 4 degrees Celsius. This ratio is 2.7. So density, kg per meter cube and kg per meter cube cancels. So relative density will be just a number. It doesn't have any unit. So it will be just a number. Relative density is just a number. So I will just give you example of certain quantities, like as I said, relative density of aluminum. Relative density of aluminum is 2.7. This is for aluminum. It means what? What is the density then? Density of that aluminum is 2.7 into 10 raised to 3. 2.7 into 10 raised to 3 means 2700 kg per meter cube. So by the knowledge of relative density of a substance, one can find out density of the substance. Or by the knowledge of density of the substance, one can very easily remember relative density. Just divide the density of the substance by the density of water, we will get relative density. So these quantities we are going to make use whenever we are going to solve the numerical problems. Okay. Now next we are going to learn about the fluid pressure, especially liquid pressure. Okay. Now we are actually learning the fluids at rest. First we are learning fluids at rest. Statics. Fluid statics. Okay. Fluid statics. Then what happens when the fluids are in motion? That is what we call it as fluid dynamics. So the mechanical properties of fluids, what we call it as fluid mechanics. Fluid mechanics can be again divided into two parts: fluid statics and fluid dynamics. Fluid statics means fluids at rest. What are the properties when the fluids are at rest? First we should learn them. Then fluid dynamics. What are the properties when the fluids are in motion? That is what we are going to learn, fluid dynamics, which has got a lot of applications. Okay. Now let us start with fluids at rest. Now we will learn about variation of fluid pressure with depth. How the pressure varies with depth. Now consider a fluid taken in a container at rest. The fluid at rest as taken in a container. Out of this fluid, consider one cylindrical element of this same fluid. Consider a cylindrical element of fluid having base area A. Base area A. This is also of same area A. And height h. Let the height of this cylindrical element of the fluid, same fluid. We are considering the cylindrical volume of the same fluid which is also at rest. I think you got the point. Don't think there is some cylinder being present inside. We are considering the cylindrical volume of the same fluid of height h with base area A. Okay. And since this is at rest, how is it at rest? That's what we are going to learn. Now, the point number 1, the upper surface area is at point number 1 and the lower surface area is point number 2. The difference in these heights is h, as I have mentioned here. It is of height h. Now, when this fluid is at rest, then the difference in pressure acting on this must be balancing the weight. You see, this fluid has got the weight. Weight of the fluid is given by mg. This is acting vertically downwards because of gravity. We are considering under the gravity. The weight of the fluid is mg, which is acting vertically downwards. This weight of the fluid is balanced by pressure, balanced by the force due to pressure. So let P2 be the pressure exerted on the lower area and P1 be the pressure exerted on the upper area. As I have said earlier, it is always the normal component of force per unit area is calculated as the liquid pressure or fluid pressure. So here also the normal component of force acting perpendicular to the area. Here also normal component of force acting perpendicular to the area. So this difference in pressure, the force due to difference in pressure must be balancing the weight. P1 is the pressure at upper surface. P2 is the pressure at the lower surface. That is, this is number 1, this is number 2, that is lower surface. Now, the force due to difference in pressure must be balancing the weight. The weight of the liquid of the cylinder, weight of the liquid cylinder is to be balanced by force due to difference in pressure. Difference in pressure. Force due to difference in pressure. See, weight of the liquid is mass of the liquid into acceleration due to gravity. This is mg. This should be equal to force due to difference in pressure. See, area of this upper surface is A and the pressure exerted here is P1. Therefore, force exerted on the surface number 1 is P1 into A and force exerted at the surface number 2 is P2 into A. Therefore, difference in pressure is P2 minus P1 into A. So, I will write it as P2A minus P1A. Pressure into area gives us force. So, P2A gives us the force acting at the bottom surface. P1A gives us the force acting on the upper surface. So, that gives us P2A minus P1A, which is equal to P2 minus P1 into A. That's all. The weight of this fluid cylinder is balanced by the difference, the force due to difference in pressure. Force due to difference in pressure. Now, we don't know the mass of this fluid. We don't know the mass of this fluid. Let us assume rho be the density. Let rho be the density of the liquid or in general fluid. Liquid or fluid. Then rho is equal to mass by volume. Mass by volume. We know what is the volume of this cylinder. What is the volume of this cylinder? Mass divided by volume of the cylinder is given by cross-sectional area into height. Area of the base into height gives us the volume. So that I can write what is the mass. Mass can be now written as A H into rho. Volume into density. Volume into density gives us mass. Therefore, I can write A H into rho. So this I am going to substitute in the equation. Therefore, A into H into rho is equal to P2 minus P1 into A. You can see here, A is there on both sides, and one more, G I have left. So I have just substituted what is mass. Mass is equal to AH rho into G, acceleration due to gravity. Mg is equal to P2 minus P1 into A. So P2 minus P1 gives us difference in pressure. Difference in pressure into area gives us the total force exerted on this fluid, so that this fluid is at rest. This fluid will be at rest when its weight is balanced by the force due to difference in pressure. I think you got the point. So A cancels. When A cancels, you are now left with P2 minus P1. A cancels here. P2 minus P1 is equal to H rho G. H rho G. This is what we are intended to find the result. So P2 minus P1 difference in pressure is equal to H rho G. Now you consider this same cylinder being taken to the open surface up to the brim of this container, so that the pressure exerted on the open surface is the atmospheric pressure, so which will be denoted by PA. Atmospheric pressure is always constant at sea level. It is taken as 1.013 into 10 raised to 5 pascals. Atmospheric pressure. What is atmospheric pressure and all we'll learn little later. So all the objects on the surface of the earth are exerted by the pressure due to air, that is called as atmospheric pressure. So if we take this same cylinder to the level of this water, upper level of the water exposed to the air, then this P1 which is acting here will be replaced by atmospheric pressure, and at the lower surface let us take it as P. Then the same thing can be written as P minus PA is equal to H rho G, where PA is the atmospheric pressure. Same thing I have written, if the same cylindrical element of the fluid is taken to the open surface of the container, then the upper surface of the cylinder is open to the atmosphere, so it will be under atmospheric pressure. Then P1 becomes PA, and P2 let us take it as P at the bottom. P2 is the pressure at the bottom base, so let us take it as P. Then if you just substitute the same equation, P2 minus P1 is equal to H rho G, then it becomes P minus PA is equal to H rho G. P minus PA is equal to H rho G. So this is called gauge pressure. This is called as gauge pressure or gauge pressure, whatever you call. So this is the difference in pressure. So the gauge pressure is the difference in pressure, which is taken as pressure due to liquid and pressure due to liquid minus atmospheric pressure gives us H rho G. So this is called gauge pressure. This is pressure due to fluid at depth H, So you can look at this. PA is always constant. Atmospheric pressure, it is always constant, 1.013 into 10 raised to 5 pascals. This is the atmospheric pressure. This is always constant at sea level. So at sea level, if it is taken constant, then P minus PA, this difference in pressure depends only on the height h, that is the depth h. Rho is the density of liquid like water is taken always constant, and g is the acceleration due to gravity. So it depends on h. As h increases, as depth increases, pressure increases. So P minus PA is directly proportional to the depth. As depth increases, the liquid pressure, the gauge pressure increases. This is very important concept. Now, if you take this PA to the right hand side, then it becomes P equal to PA plus H rho G. PA plus H rho G. This is sum of atmospheric pressure, sum of the atmospheric pressure plus the liquid pressure. So, upper surface of the water in the container is always under atmospheric pressure, pressure due to air, right? And if you go to any depth of the water, then it is sum of atmospheric pressure and the pressure due to fluid alone. That gives us total pressure. This is called as absolute pressure. Absolute pressure due to fluid. Absolute pressure due to fluid. So two types of pressures we have learned. One is gauge pressure, which is the pressure due to fluid alone at depth h, and total pressure is the pressure due to atmosphere, that is atmospheric pressure and gauge pressure. Both together we call it as absolute pressure. Okay. So in the conclusion is that since PA is always constant, the absolute pressure or the gauge pressure is directly proportional to the depth. As you go deeper and deeper into the water, the pressure goes on increasing. The pressure is directly proportional to height. This is how we learn the variation of pressure with respect to depth. Variation of pressure with respect to depth inside a fluid. We will solve some numerical problems and we will be able to understand the meaning of this clearly in the next video. Thank you. Have a nice day.